It is midday on the savannah. A soft roaring sound is coming from above. A small spiky object appears in the sky. The humming is getting louder. A drone safari at a safe distance.
It's definitely hot. 17
September 2014, Somalia, 105 kilometers south of Mogadishu. Witnesses hear ground-shaking explosions. Somali and African Union forces are rushing to the site. A US drone has carried out a strike on a convoy of Al-Shabaab, killing 6 militants and its leader. For a continent with large, uncontrolled land masses like Africa, drones offer many opportunities. They can be used to find militant groups hiding out in remote areas, and by wildlife rangers to track down poachers. The UN uses them for peacekeeping, and the US uses them to kill suspected terrorists. Drones are coming to Africa, and their numbers are growing. In December 2013, President Goodluck Jonathan presented the new Nigerian drone. He called it a landmark in the nation's history, but its name is Gulma, meaning gossip in Hausa. The Nigerian Air Force started to build the Gulma after foreign drones kept breaking down. Today, everywhere in Africa, engineers are working on a new generation of African drones. Algeria, Ethiopia, Libya, South Africa, Tunisia, and Uganda. They all have their own drone program. Most are still small, but as drone technology is becoming cheaper, countries will be able to develop better and more advanced systems. 14 African countries now have military drones. Egypt, Morocco, and Angola have the larger models, like the Predator and the Israeli-built Heron. But one country has by far the most drones in Africa: the US. From its 9 drone bases in Africa, its Predator drones can reach almost all corners of the continent. You can find drone bases in Burkina Faso, Djibouti, Ethiopia, Kenya, Mauritania, Niger, the Seychelles, South Sudan, and Uganda. Africa's population will grow from 1.5 billion to 4 billion by the end of the century. The US is closely watching militant groups like Al-Shabaab and fear their influence on a growing young population. Africa's huge cities could burst into massive pockets of violence. So in 2007, the US decided to establish a special US military command for Africa, AFRICOM. With troops stationed in 11 African countries, it is not just there to keep an eye on terrorism, but also to safeguard the flow of resources needed to develop high-tech cell phones, computers, and aircraft. The United Nations has been using peacekeeping drones in Africa since 2006. Currently, drones are used in the dense jungle of Congo to monitor the M23 rebels. The UN wants to use drones more and more in risky areas to minimize attacks on convoys. But the peacekeeping forces on the ground will still be needed. In the meantime, US veterans from Afghanistan are working in Congo as private contractors. They're using their wartime skills to fix peacekeeping drones. It is the end of the Cold War, 1987. Deep in Angola, South African forces are rushing in to fight off an attack by the Soviet-backed Angolan forces. In one of the heaviest battles of the border wars, it is South African drones that are flying overhead to provide surveillance. South Africa's arms industry rose out of the arms embargo of 1977. The UN did not allow countries to sell weapons to the apartheid regime, so the South African arms industry grew into the largest weapons manufacturer in Africa. The first South African drone was the Seeker, built in 1986. Today, the state-owned company Denel Dynamics is exporting drones to Algeria and Saudi Arabia. and is looking to conquer the African and Middle Eastern drone market. It builds the Seeker 2, the larger Seeker 400 which can be armed, and the smaller Hungwei surveillance drone. Most drones used by African countries are made in Israel, but South Africa is trying hard to become the main drone supplier. In the world of unmanned warfare, Africa is becoming the next battlefield. Currently, the US controls Africa's skies. It patrols the continent from its 9 drone bases and carries out strikes wherever it sees fit. China has no military presence in Africa yet. But with its growing economic influence, China could very well start doing the same. Many African countries are critical and do not want any foreign military on their soil. At the same time, African engineers are working hard to build their own drones. Unlike cell phones have bypassed the necessity for an internet infrastructure, military drones in Africa could bypass the necessity to have an army. With just a few armed drones, anyone can strike from above and rule by remote control.